I think we have the guest panelists as well now.
Okay.
I think we have the guest panelists as well now.
Somebody is having bad microphone.
Microphone should be put on mute. Okay. So, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Xtra Bytes at Exploring Light, and we are trying to make these lockdown times the most memorable and most useful for all of us. And we have some wonderful panel with us today, and trying to get the best out of our speaker, who's very unique today, and I think it will be very interesting to hear from him. And let us all welcome Ole Henrik, who's from Norway. And interesting about him is that, okay, now before I talk about him, I think let us talk about our panel as well. So we have Sandeep Mathur, we have Prakash Kumar Singh, and we have Som Roy with us, and we'll probably have another person joining us soon. So as he joins, you will get to see him. And so talking about Ole, it is very interesting. Before I talk about Ole, let me talk about myself, because I started at the age of 40. I thought that I'm very late, and then I realized when I saw Ole that he was even he was even smarter than me, and he decided to start so early in his life that he was almost beyond 50. And so for me, the life began at 40. I think for him it began almost at 50. And it is very interesting because he started photography not because he was influenced by photographers. He started photography because he was gifted a camera by his wife. So that is very interesting. So Ole, it's been just 7 years of journey, and I think it's phenomenal to see that within these 7 years, when people are trying to somehow figure out how to take their first step, they are not able to even stabilize themselves when they stand. Forget holding a tripod. And you have won so many awards. Your images have been published in so many publications. And you are also an ambassador with brands like Pentax and Nissi and Sirui, then Loepro, Lexer, BenQ, Samsung S10. I mean, this is amazing. And when you know that so many big brands are actually approaching you and making you an ambassador, the achievement really speaks for itself. So this session is not for me. So we would request you that if you can take us through what did happen after you opened that gift box and saw the camera, and did ever during that journey of trying to experiment with photography, your wife felt that oh, she did a mistake by gifting you that camera?
Well, in a sense, it all started back in '92 when I met my wife, and we celebrated our first Christmas together. And she was very fond of photography. So I bought her a camera as a Christmas gift. a rather nice camera. And she was the one who liked to stop the car and take images of scenery, put on the video camera when we got a video camera. And I couldn't figure why we had to stop the car so often in order to take these images. Then let us fast forward to 2012, and I got my first Samsung smartphone, and it had a camera, inbuilt camera. And for some reason, I began taking images with that cell phone. And it was fun. I had no idea it could be so fun capturing images with a cell phone. And I found some very strange, or I don't remember the name, where you could edit your images online and add some filters. And I found that very cool and very fun to do, and see how the images I had shot changed character altogether when I put them through a filter. So when we approached the end of 2012, I had my birthday 2nd of January. I asked my wife, do you think it's okay if we buy a camera to me as a birthday present? And she said, yes. And we have never been a family which have had a lot of money. We have had times where we barely manage it from month to month. But the last 10 years, things have been better. So she said yes, and we went to a local store and bought the cheapest beginner's camera we found with a kit lens. And that's how it started. So it was an ordinary crop camera, a Canon camera actually. And I started to use it, of course, and I only knew about JPEGs. Then 2 or 3 months later, our daughter had a friend over here, and she said to me, you have to shoot in RAW. And I was, say it again? You have to shoot in RAW, but what is RAW? And then she tried to explain that RAW files contain much more information and it's a much better format to shoot images. So, okay, so I found the RAW setting on my camera, but the trouble was that those RAW files didn't show on my computer. Well, you need software, okay? So I found some free RAW converters, which was absolutely terrible. But it was a start. So the next step was to learn how to shoot bracketed. And I bought, I think it was Photomatics, the HDR software, and produced a lot of terrible HDR images. But that really doesn't matter because I had so much fun doing it. And of course, now 7 years later, if I look back on the images I took back then, I'm oh my God. But that's not the point. The point is what was happening back then in that moment. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And that was the most important thing. And then I had to upgrade. So I think it was in May or June that year, 2013, that I bought Lightroom. And to be honest, I didn't understand anything of it in the beginning. And I suppose that's how it is for everyone who buys a new software, where to start, how to use it. So next step was finding some tutorials on YouTube, plenty of free tutorials on YouTube, which can help you get started with using, for example, Lightroom. And I posted my images on Facebook, and to my surprise, I received some nice response. And that's, of course, is motivating. Of course it is. And then I saw someone posting images on a platform called 500px. Yeah, perhaps I can join So in late September that year, I set up an account on 500px and posted my first terrible HDR images, which I have deleted a long time ago. And well, you know, I didn't get much response. So I thought, yeah, perhaps I saw a lot of people were commenting and liking, and yeah, perhaps that's how I should get noticed. I should comment on others' images and like a lot of images. Perhaps I will be noticed then. But that didn't work either. So I had to make a quality decision. Ole Henrik, you have to learn Photoshop. You have to learn how to edit your images, and you have to practice. There are no shortcuts. You have to do it the hard way. So in October, November that year, I began my first forays into Photoshop. And I couldn't only do very simple basic editing, of course. But slowly but surely, what I did improved. I'm not sure where this passion came from, or this strong desire to improve. I just noticed that it was within me. So I cannot boast of that. Just people say I'm that sort of person who, when I'm get interested in something, I give 100%. And perhaps that is true. That's how I'm wired and born. And I remember when the first image, I believe it was in beginning of 2014, reached the first page on 500px. Barely made it, but I still so vividly remember the feeling of making it.
Yeah.
You know, when I started to learn Photoshop, I thought to myself, okay, Ole Henrik, if you can produce one image that reaches the front page on 500px during your lifetime, you should be really happy. Because I was so impressed, so blown away by the images I saw. For example, Ryan Dyer, which you spoke with the other day, his images were doing well. Sean Bagshaw, Mark Adamus, a lot of great landscape photographers were posting their images on 500px back then. So that's how it started.
That's fantastic. That's really inspirational, because you say that you don't know how did this passion thing came into it, and when did it happen. But just one question, I think that everybody faces in their life as a journey as a photographer, is that when you start posting first time as a beginner photographer, holding the camera or through mobile phone on Facebook or Instagram, you tend to get carried away very fast by the kind of likes and all the accolades that you're getting. So yes, you said it is motivating because you want to get those positive vibes, only then you move ahead. But they also tend to really push you back or give you this false sense of satisfaction and achievement, and you start believing that you have arrived as a photographer. So did this kind of thought occur to you as well, or you also went through that small phase, or you were above that and you were already a teacher and you already had that age, you had the maturity to handle all those likes and praises that you were getting on Facebook?
No, of course, I'm suppose I'm like most people that you get an ego boost by likes and comments in the beginning. That's absolutely true. And of course, that was important for me. I felt that finally I could express myself artistically. For many years, I have believed that I wasn't creative at all, that I didn't have a single creative cell in my body. So it was quite a revelation and to see that I could create something. So yes, but of course, I was also preoccupied with likes and comments in the beginning. It doesn't matter so much now these days. But of course, if Mark Adamus should leave a comment on one of my images, that would of course be a huge thing.
Yeah,
For
obviously.
me personally, of course. So how shall I put it? I think that the most important thing for me with photography is that it gives me something personally. A place to rest. You know, or perhaps you don't know, but I'm a typical introvert, perhaps more than most people. So when I go out with the camera, I prefer to do it alone, to just be swallowed up by the moment, just be there. In the beginning, I was so afraid of failing behind the cameras that I at times had a terrible temper when things didn't happen fast enough, the tripod legs didn't extend fast enough, the filters didn't fit into their slots immediately. I could go nuts from rage, but not anymore. So
That's very
what was,
interesting. So,
yeah, sorry.
you're saying something.
No, did I answer your question?
Yeah. You answered, because see, this is very important, and this phase, if somebody really comes out of it, is usually closed if he's serious. And I think that that was one very small thing that I thought that it's important for our viewers to know, that to understand your thought process during that time. Also, there's one particular thought that just came to my mind, was that you eventually are a landscape photographer. Do you think, and you have an advantage of living in Norway, which is actually exotically beautiful, and the kind of opportunities that you get in creating your landscape images are immense, unlike people like us. Whenever we move out, either we see smokes emanating out of some factories, or we have, so it's an urban life that we lead. For us to really go to a beautiful place to create landscapes is quite far off, and has to be well planned journey. Now, do you think that you are being a part of, or you are residing in such a beautiful place as Norway, also contributed to you becoming a landscape photographer eventually, or even getting interested into photography after you got you almost demanded your gift, the camera as a gift? So after that, did you being a part of Norway and such a beautiful vistas all around play any part?
Most likely it did. I haven't given that any thought really, but I live in an area with a lot of lakes and hills. This is farmland, so of course it's a huge advantage that I can visit a lot of beautiful locations, which are the closest is a 5-minute drive. So that has given me plenty of opportunity to practice behind the camera, and you know, the more images you have on your hard drive, the more you can edit and practice on your editing. And I also discovered the cabin back in August 2013, and I believe the cabin has been a major door opener for me, because people so enjoyed that scene, and I can understand why. It's a very beautiful scene. It's absolutely overshot these days, of course it is. But I believe the cabin was a major door opener for me.
Okay.
And you know, I can if I place myself in the car, if I drive for 4 hours, I'm among mountains and rivers and waterfalls. And that doesn't require a lot of planning. It can be a day trip, and I can be back during the evening or during the night. So, of course, I have a huge advantage in that respect.
Yeah.
One thing I have forgotten.
Yeah.
remember now, I have forgotten to say thanks for the invitation. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for accepting our invite to be here, and it's such a uh, um, wonderful moment for all of us as panelists, and even all of people, Indians who are watching this show online, and it is going to be immensely beneficial to them.
Exactly. You know, Ole, this reminds me, in 2015, I specifically traveled to get this cabin scene. I remember I spoke to you, I got all the details, but we were late. We couldn't reach that place. And
Oh,
I was so sad I had to come empty handed.
no. So, you know, that I have contact with a lot of people during the years, and many have wanted to visit the cabin. And my memory isn't what it once were, but you have been there. Yes, we have communicated about it. I
Yes,
remember now.
it was late at night and we couldn't possibly reach there. And next day morning, we had a flight. We traveled 5 hours by car to reach there, but we missed it.
I can send you. I can send you a couple of raw files of the cabin.
I will call you later.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Um, may I say one more thing?
Yeah, please.
Please, please.
You know, I find it fascinating and a bit strange that, in a sense, I have become a well-known person in the international photo community. Because when I look at my life, it's a pretty ordinary life. I'm a pretty boring person. I cook dinner, I take the dishes, I do the laundry, fold the laundry, wash the house. I'm at school teaching my students. And then I have this life, this other life, in a sense, where I'm suddenly this famous person who many knows about. So it's a strange life.
Well, you are a superhero with photography.
Yes.
And like you are a general person.
Yeah, it's
Anybody
funny.
wants to ask anything? I have few more questions, and then we can take him. I request him to take us through his images. So, anybody?
We are waiting to see the images.
Okay.
One question that comes to my mind is that you've been a mathematics teacher, and you still are.
Yep.
Now, did it help you learn the f-stops faster?
You mean night photography?
Yeah. So any kind of calculation that this is the focal length and this is the shutter speed, you were familiar with the numbers faster, or are you struggled because the numbers?
No, I have been out in the dark. First time I was out taking images in the dark. I had f11 ISO 100, 30 seconds, and the image came out black, and I couldn't find. And I couldn't understand what is going on. So again, I had to resort to some tutorials, written tutorials, but no, I don't know if things have been easier for me because I've been a math teacher. No, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, so we are all itching to really look at your images and fascinating stories behind them. So please take us through that.
I just have a question, Ole, for you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Something I never got a chance to ask you. Obviously, you belong to one of the most beautiful countries in the world. That's a big advantage, especially because you live in the countryside. In your portfolio, I've seen earlier photographs of Italy, Santa Maddalena and a couple of places.
Yeah.
So, did you stop traveling outside of Norway, or you have to stay at home? What's the story?
The images from Italy, that was a family vacation,
Right.
I believe 5 years ago this summer. And my images from Lofoten, also a family vacation, where we made an arrangement where I could take some images in Lofoten during the evening. while the others were at, I think it was a pub watching football. And my wife was very kind, and as a 50-year anniversary present, she took me to Iceland back in 2014. So I haven't traveled much abroad, not at all actually alone, but I have visited several locations in Norway, in the western parts and northern western parts. I have. But it's also a matter of you know, I have a family, I have a wife, I have kids, and my kids are grown up now, but they have wishes for the summer vacations. And I cannot spend a lot of money on myself traveling to the United States or to Iceland alone. That would be very, very selfish. I cannot do that. So I put myself in the car and I live in a beautiful country. So I use what I have. And then I save the money for our mutual benefit as a family.
I've been to Maldives as well, right?
Sorry?
Maldives in Asia, Maldives.
Yeah, we have been married for 25 years. 2 years ago, we had been married for 25 years, and my wife so wanted to go to the Maldives. So I said, yes, we can do that. And, you know, that was one of the best vacations I ever had. It was a small island, but the people were so friendly, and I could see the Milky Way from a completely new angle and get the core. Absolutely amazing, the Milky Ways you get in India and the Maldives. And we saw Indian television because they use your services for television. So yeah, that's correct. We were in the Maldives. It was absolutely fantastic.
Marriage has done you well in terms of your photography. First camera, visit to Maldives.
Yeah, that's true. It's been a blessing. It's been a blessing.
Sorry, you can take us through your images. Sorry.
Yeah, shall I share the screen now and go into Lightroom?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, give me a few seconds. I'm such a clumps when it comes to technical things, but okay, can you see the Lightroom now?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. This image is from Jotunheimen. It's a 4-hour drive from where I live. And yes, yeah. And Carl Lowell, who is a very good friend, he visited a year ago. And we rented some cabins and traveled around. And the last day we were out on the road, we decided quite spontaneously to visit Jotunheimen. And we were greeted by a most beautiful, amazing sunset. And the peaks are amazing, and the mosquitoes are absolutely stunning up here. So this is the raw file. I believe it looked something. I have to move you guys around. Sorry. And it looked something like that straight out of camera. And I believe I exposed this one for the highlights. And the finished image is probably no, sorry. No, it is not that one, but it's the same scene. So, but I also would like to show you some other images from that evening. This one, this mountain here is huge. Of course, the camera cannot capture how large and magnificent and awesome these mountains are. So I have stretched the image a little in my post-processing. But this was shot with an easy medium filter to take down the highlights and a CPL to bring out the reflections. And this is the raw file. And this is how it looks straight out of camera. So I went from there to there, straight out of camera and after finished editing. When it comes to my editing philosophy, I am rather liberal. I'm the only person I'm accountable to is myself. So if I would like to add a little rainbow, well, I will. For example, let's have a look at, I went up to Jotunheimen alone earlier this summer. It was in the middle of June. And I would like to show you one image which, this one was shot with the Pentax. The medium format is 645 set. And this is a blend of several exposures. I have one for the sun. And when the sun is in the open, this part will be completely blown out. And if I'm to expose for the sun, the shadows will be exceedingly dark. So I believe this is a blend of 3 or 4 images. So let's have a look. This one is for the shadows and also for the water here. You can see it's not so blown out. If you go to one where we have the sun out, let's see if it's that one. You see that part is completely blown out and almost impossible to fix in post without a lot of cloning. So the sun is shot at f32. That's one of the great things with medium format lenses. They go all the way to f32. And you can shoot f22 without problems, you know, almost no diffraction. That's one of the great benefits. And this is the one I blended in for the sun. Very clean and nice sun. But you see, these parts are completely blown out. So I had to use a dark exposure. I believe it is this one for the clouds, plus some cloning for this part and this part, which you also see are completely blown out, no detail. And the finished image was awarded an editor's choice, not a photo of the day, but an editor's choice on the f-stoppers. And so that was a nice surprise. I also worked the image a little in yesterday because you see these 2 peaks.
Yeah.
And yesterday this image lacked a little depth between these 2. So what I did last evening was that I blurred this one a little bit. So in order to create more separation between this one and this one, because this one is closer to the camera. But when both are equally sharp, it looks like them are equally close to the camera, which wasn't the fact. So just a high amount of Gaussian blur in Photoshop and masking at a very low opacity. I believe I used around 14%.
So Ole, specifically for this image, do you normally hand blend your masks, or do you use luminosity masks?
I rarely use luminosity masks for blending. I often blend by hand, or I use the lines. Here there are very good lines to make a selection along. So it varies. Sometimes I have to try several approaches before I find something that works when I'm to blend several images. Sometimes luminosity masking, sometimes simple selections, other times I blend by hand.
Yeah, that's one of the problems we face. Should we go with luminosity mask or should we hand blend? How do you make that decision every time?
It's always a trial and error. I may, for example, start out with trying to use a luminosity mask to do the blending, and it fails completely. And then it's like a math problem. You have to try several approaches before you find the way that leads to the solution. So I wish there was a receipt you could use every time, but there isn't. Every image is so different. So, and as you grow and learn more, you also learn more approaches on how to blend and how to approach an image. And for me, it has often been learning by trial and error. Okay, this didn't work. Perhaps I can try that. No, that didn't work either. Perhaps I can try that. Yeah, that worked. Okay, but I have to do some cloning. I can live with that. Okay, so I will use that method now. So there's no straight answer in how to blend. But I know a lot of people use exclusively luminosity masks in order to blend images like this. So, any further questions regarding this image?
No, not from me. I have two questions around two different images. Probably we'll speak about them later.
But for this, Ole, how many exposures did you blend?
I believe it's 3 or 4.
3 or 4.
It's one for the sun. It's one for the shadows. It's one for that part. And I believe I put a filter on the camera also to smooth the water a little.
Okay.
So you see, I have a rather slow exposure. Yeah. So I had a filter I could screw on. I believe it was a 5-stop or something.
Okay.
So that was that image. We can have a look at one more from the same scene. This is also a blend of several images. It's the same mountains, but I have backed off a little, perhaps a couple of 100 meters from the other image. And this is also a blend of several images. So this is one of the images, and you see how small the mountains are here because they're in the middle of the frame. So this is also the resulting image is also a focal length blend. So I believe this is 28 millimeters, and the mountains you saw is 45. I had a zoom lens, and it's relatively easy to blend along these lines so that the mountains get their proper size. Sorry, that image. Let me see if I can find.
You always opt for perspective blending, Ole, or you also you try to transform and warp?
Yeah, it happens. I warp and then also use free transform. Absolutely, but you know we can stretch the mountains to a certain degree, but if we stretch them too much, they start to lose detail. So often it can be an idea to shoot two separate exposures, one for the mountains in the background
That's a good point. Very good point.
and one for the foreground. So of course it's not super easy to blend along this ridge with a lot of detail.
That's so well done.
So I don't remember how I did it right now, but I think it was some cloning I had to, in particular in this area, to get it right. I will also show you another image where I did some focal length blending. Give me a second, I just have to. There we are. Yes, so this is my base image exposed for the highlights. It was a very beautiful sunrise, and this is 15 millimeters. So I was using the Pentax 1530. These three peaks in the background are huge, big mountains, but they look so tiny in the middle of a frame on a wide angle lens. So here they are better, 30 millimeter, and they look much larger. And it had to blend along these lines, I believe. And the finished image is this one.
Gorgeous.
This is some interesting information that we are getting through these images, because till now we have been talking only about two different kinds of blending, either the exposure blending or the focus stacking kind of thing. And we are now talking about almost you are changing the perspective by changing the focal length and then going for the blending, and which is I think amazing, and the results really show for the effort that you put into that.
Yeah, it was a lot of work getting this right, a lot of cloning.
I can understand.
To get this right. So, but it was worth it. It was worth it.
Ole, the peaks in the background, did you dodge and burn them?
Yeah, I did. So the light, the sun was rising here. The light came from this direction. So I have dodged them, color dodged the peaks, yes, and also this one, to give some more, an idea from where the light came, and add some drama.
The sky is phenomenal. In terms of your color selection, Ole, I wanted to ask you this. You do not always go for analogous colors. Sometimes they can be split analogous as well, from what I've seen. Do you maintain your color palette, specific color palette?
Yes, it seems so to me that I have a tendency to often end up with a similar color palette on almost every image, and often use split toning in Lightroom to add warmth to the highlights and some cold to the shadows. Was it something like that you were thinking about some?
Yes, I mean, I like that. I have to admit, I like your color tones, and that's why I wanted to ask you. You know, the choices of the yellow greens specifically in pretty much all your images, that stands out. The foliage.
Yes.
So do you do color range select and then basically pop them up?
Yeah, in this image, I loaded it into Photoshop as a smart object. And then I went to Camera Raw and brought up the yellows and the greens. And when I returned to Photoshop, I masked in here what I had done in Camera Raw. You know, bringing up saturation, bringing up luminosity, these parts. So is it okay that if we have a look at a different image?
Yes.
Yeah.
Will that work for you?
There's just one very good question that is coming on YouTube, and that's why Rajan Datta, and he's asking something which is, since the medium format cameras have a different depth of field as compared to full frame or crop sensor, what method do you use to get sharp images? Do you still focus stack, or you use hyperfocal distance, or you just maybe close down the aperture or something like that? Is it different from the approach is different, or is it the same?
It's slightly different. It is true that the medium format camera has less depth of field. So I have to be a bit more careful with my foregrounds. But I have found out that I can overcome that with going to a narrow aperture. You know, f/22 works super well on a medium format camera without getting any diffraction and still have a sharp and decent foreground. So, and usually I shoot from a tripod. So, and I'm often having the camera in around 150 above the 1.50 meters above the ground. So usually that's not a big problem. But if I'm very close to the foreground, I have to focus stack also with the medium format camera.
Okay.
Yeah. So of course, if you have a crop sensor camera, you can go much closer to your foreground without having to focus stack. And with my regular full frame camera, if I'm very close to the foreground, I can shoot the immediate foreground at f/22 and the rest at, for example, f/11. And if I'm not too close, then I will have a super sharp foreground, and the two exposures are super simple to blend by hand.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, because when you focus stack, it's more work, but Photoshop does a great job in blending the exposure, but you will have some focus breathing when you are focusing through a scene.
Yeah.
Some extra work. Was that helpful?
Yeah, very, very helpful. Thank you so much. We can move to the next image probably.
Yeah, you know, it's funny to live this far north because winter sunsets and sunrises can be absolutely stunning. We can have colors that are so strong that you are almost, yeah, you know, when I'm witnessing scenes like this, I'm absolutely in awe. So
you started feeling in awe of these scenes after you picked up the camera, or even before that?
while being there. So while being there, so the colors are so extremely strong. Let's see, I have, this one is straight out of camera.
Wow.
And it's a winter sunset. And let's have a look at the history. How did it look straight out of camera? It looked like that. That is straight out of camera.
Wow.
And so that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So last evening, I started out Oh, sorry. Give me a second. I started out processing this image. And let's have a look at the history. Yeah, this is how it looked straight out of camera. And then I did some adjustments in Lightroom.
Mm.
Do you want me to go through the steps?
Yeah, few steps which are.
So this is imported to how it looked straight out of camera.
Right.
So first thing I did was lowering the exposure -60. Then I opened the shadows +100, blacks +100. I took down the exposure a little bit more before I took up the whites a little. And I made it a little warmer. I think I ended up with something like that, temperature. And then I took the blue calibration, saturation, and pushed it all the way to 100. And then this happened.
Mm.
You know where it is?
Mm.
Lovely.
So here, at the bottom of Lightroom, I pushed it all the way to 100. And then the colors really popped. So I had to go and to vibrance and, and saturation and take down the colors a little. I also added a graduated filter, it seemed to me. Oh yeah, I darkened the foreground a little. Took up the whites. And I also adjusted, there was some purple, a bit too much purple in my foreground, so I adjusted that a little. And so very few adjustments in Lightroom. So this is how the image looked before I loaded into Photoshop. And I wonder, can I now click on Photoshop and you can see it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Can you see Photoshop now?
Yeah, we can.
No, Photoshop is not visible. Your Lightroom is visible right now.
Not Photoshop.
No.
So,
Right now only Lightroom is visible.
so if I go to new share and then I go for Photoshop, and can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Can I close down this window?
Yeah, whatever. Yes.
I can hide it.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I can do something like that. So, okay. So I have loaded into Photoshop. The first thing I did was I grabbed a selective color and I went to I use selective color a lot. And you see the blues over here. I don't know how visible it is on your screens, but it's very magenta. So I took out some magenta, added some cyan, and a little more blue. And then I just inverted it, Control-I, and with white as my foreground color, I just try to fix these that are way too magenta in the blues. So, but now comes the really fun part. Selective color, and now I go to the yellows. There's a lot of yellow in the sky, you can see that?
Yeah.
And if I take open it up, doesn't look good, but then I add a lot of yellow, a lot of red, and some magenta. And what happens now? Yes, I get a lot of light and saturation in this area without blowing out the colors. So if you now invert this one, Control-I, and brush in. Can you see the light?
Yeah.
Yes, visible.
It's visible.
And that's only with a selective color adjustment.
That's amazing.
And the next thing I did was I flattened everything. And I went, this one, dodging, and set it to midtones and around 30 and protect tones can really bring in some good light to your image.
Wow, look at that.
So I'm just adding some light. So this also, I could have done this in a different manner, but the inbuilt, if you use the midtones, you can get a very nice effect. And I have, the past days, I have been practicing and trying to do this method called clone painting using the clone stamp tool. And that has been very challenging, but also fun. But I don't think I will do that today. So I think I will just use regular masks, else this will never end. What more can we do? Yes, I will try another selective color, but now there's a lot of red. You see that in the foreground here, a lot of red. So I will go to reds and do the same thing. More light, bring back the colors, perhaps a little magenta. Invert. A big brush, perhaps a little, and just add a little more color and light here. So selective color is super effective for giving warm colors light without, how shall I put it, clipping them. Perhaps a little more there. And next step, we need to create a glow. Do you agree? We need some glow over here.
Yeah.
So I will now make a visible stamp layer. Control Shift Alt E. And I will go to Filter, Gaussian Blur. And I have a rather high radius, 263 or something like that, between something around there. Click OK. And next, I will go to Image Adjustments and add some brightness. This will create a very nice glow. And next, of course, is to add a black mask to hide everything. And now I will go at a rather low opacity, perhaps 15%, and add some glow. And if I'm not happy with how bright it is, I can go back to the original layer, use Photoshop's inbuilt dodge tool, and add a little more light. So this creates a very nice glow. So let's have a look before and after. And this part is partly clipped, so I can add a little, just a little there also. So the edges are less hard. Something like that. It's not perfect, but it gives you an idea what you can do in terms of creating some glow. And the light comes from here. During winter, this is a perfect scene because the sun goes down here. But as we are closing or nearing spring, the sun will go down in this direction, and during summer it will go down far on the other side. And that's one of the also cool things of living in the north, is that the sun never goes down or rises at the same place during the various seasons. So this composition wouldn't work during summer because the light would come from far to the right. During winter, perfect.
Great, wonderful.
Of course, there are many more things we can do to this image, but just to give you a few ideas. This part is too bright, for example. This is too bright. But that will be for another time. Shall we go back to Lightroom, or do you have any questions?
So,
I was interested in two of your photographs, Ole.
Yeah.
Winter steps and futurism, right?
Oh, can you please say it again?
Winter steps and futurism. I think winter steps is one of your images.
Yes, futurism. Yes, let's have a look at that one.
Yeah.
I have to go back to Lightroom then.
Yeah, okay.
And share. Yes. Can you? No, sorry.
Yeah, Lightroom is visible.
Is Lightroom visible now?
Yes.
Okay, I have to go to library. And I was visiting Hans Gunnar and his favorite location, Hans Gunnar Aslaksen. It was in February. And futurism is over here. This image, some?
Yes.
Yes. So what did I do here? The foreground is a blend of several exposures. So I was standing here waiting for waves coming crashing in. I had my camera on continuous shooting, and every time there came a wave, I pressed on the shutter and shot the incoming wave. And I believe this is f11 and I tried to keep it at 1/4, 1/5, 1/6, perhaps half a second. And usually I'm at f22 when I do this. Perhaps these are the images from that one. Yeah, f20, so that I have a sharp foreground. And you can see the waves are coming in.
Yeah.
And then I'll load all of these. I go through a lot of images, pick the best one and load them into Photoshop and blend all the wave action by hand. And as you can see, there's no Milky Way here. So that was something I came up with the day after when I started to go through the files. I was thinking, would it be cool to add a Milky Way to this image and see what happens? And I was so happy with the result that I opted to post it. So this is a, what shall we call it? Creative blend? I don't know.
A composite.
A composite. And there was another image you were talking about some, it was winter steps.
Yes.
When did yeah, I remember. Give me a second. It was in February last year. I was out testing some new Nisi filters. And I got a very beautiful winter sunset. So I think it's one, perhaps that one.
Yes,
This one.
Yes.
That's the winter steps. And this is a single exposure.
Wow. It's crazy. Beautiful shot.
No, not that. It's not the raw. Give me a second and I'll find the raw file. Not that one. I believe it must. Yeah, there's the raw file. Let's have a look at how it looked straight out of camera. Sorry. So this is straight out of camera. So it was rather underexposed. I shot it handheld. So, and I know with my handshake, I need a rather fast shutter speed. So this is 180, and at 15 millimeter, even I can manage to get a decent handheld shot. And the Pentax cameras have a superb dynamic range. So it's no problem bringing up the shadows and
Wow.
the blacks.
Yeah.
So this is the finished image.
Got a great sensor, Ole.
Yeah, it's a great sensor. And the Pentax engineers have really worked wonders with that sensor. I believe it's an old Sony sensor.
It is. It is.
It's the A7R sensor, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. But somehow the Pentax engineer have optimized it in such a way that it's absolutely stunning how much you can bring out of those files. So this is Winter Steps, single exposure, no creative blend.
This is amazing. This image actually makes me think that how these simple compositions, beautiful light, and very simple steps make it so beautiful that. And I saw this on 1X, getting published on 1X, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it really tells a story, and that's such a wonderful thing to. I think you titled it well as well. It's a wonderful title.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. I have to admit I was super happy when I arrived here and saw those steps in the snow.
Yeah.
And I don't know who have walked there or how long they've been there, but it came some snow during the night and made this just perfect. So I was super lucky.
It's one of my favorite images of you.
Oh, I really loved it. I really loved it.
Ole, actually, Rajan was asking, he's on YouTube again, he has been asking a lot of good questions. One of it was, when you shoot Milky Ways, do you use the inbuilt tracker of K1 or you have a star tracker?
I do not have a separate star tracker, I do not. But the Pentax K1 has an inbuilt tracker. And I rarely use it, I have to admit. I should have used it more often. But often when I arrive at the scene and the Milky Way and the stars are so clear, and I suffer from paranoia in the darkness. I'm often out alone and I suffer from paranoia. It has happened actually a couple of times when I have had to just abandon everything and go home. So my point is, I simply forget I have the star tracker. But I have tried it and it works flawlessly. So it's just amazing what the Pentax have done by adding it.
That's really thoughtful, because I've seen that most of the camera manufacturers do not think about landscape photography as photographers as their final like target audience. Everybody is looking at the money minting kind of things, and it's interesting to see how these companies have thought about landscape photographers as well.
Yeah, and you know, the engineers have also added a histogram in live view. So you can put a 10-stop filter in front of the lens on the Pentax K1 or K1 II, put it on live view, and you have a histogram and can just nail the exposure perfectly without having to calculating. And even better,
that's a good one.
yeah, and even better, they have a timer in bulb mode. So we can set it to 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and do something else while the camera does the job. And that's also something I really enjoy with the Pentax. On
And
all other,
it's weather sealed as well, right, Ole? It's weather sealed as well. The pen.
yeah, oh yeah, it is. I have stood in heavy rain, really heavy rain. You know, the kind of rain you get when it's thundering and lightning, and the camera has been soaked and worked flawlessly afterwards.
Yeah, yeah.
So Pentax is generally underrated for some reason, but they produce great cameras and well thought out, like you said, well thought out for landscape
Yeah,
photographers.
very rarely we see any manufacturer doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah. There is yeah. There is one question from Sal. So Sal, can you on your video and can you on your can you switch on your
Okay,
yeah,
is that yeah?
you can
Can you
ask.
hear me? Hi all. I just want to know if you have any tips or suggestions for the viewers who'd like to enter the world of landscape photography for the first time.
do you mind repeating your question?
Sure. Do you have any tips or suggestions for the viewers who want to enter the world of landscape photography?
Yes. How shall I put it? I noticed from my own experience that the more I practiced, the more I learned. And there are no shortcuts really. Even though you have a talent, you have to work often hard to get things reasonably right. You have to learn how to use Lightroom or Photoshop, and the more the practice, the better your eyes become at spotting things that are off, halos, colors that do not match. And if you're, let's say you're out traveling, you're in Iceland, and you know you will never be able to go back, make sure you have enough exposures to work with. Focus stack if necessary, shoot exposures for the shadows, highlights, make sure that everything is in focus, and shoot more than you need of each scene so that you're absolutely sure you have something that will work for you. I have been to Iceland and messed up big time with my wife. I changed lenses and put on my Samyang 14mm to get a wider perspective of the famous Kirkjufjell, and forgot to check my focus. And every image from that lens of that mountain is unusable, simply because I was slack in the field, didn't do the job properly. So, well, I don't know if I have anything more intelligent to say about this. Save, practice, train, and also same composition, same place multiple times. Good practice also.
Hal, you have anything more to ask?
No, that's great. That's great.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I hope he gets to go to Iceland once more to make up for it.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope so too.
So we have somebody else to reveal to you before we run out of time. So, Carl, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. So just switch on your video. Yeah.
Okay, how do I do that here?
Yeah, you can switch on the video.
I'm trying to figure out how I do that actually.
At the bottom left corner.
Okay. So. Hey, Ole. How's it
Hello,
going,
Carl.
buddy? How are you?
I'm fine. Good to see you. And what a nice surprise.
It's awesome.
He was on all this while, Ole. He was on all patiently waiting for you.
Yeah, I
This
just wanted to congratulate you on the featured interview. That's awesome.
you know, Carl, you are the one who should have been here.
No, get out of here.
Carl, as mentioned, we spent almost a week together this summer, and he is one of the perhaps most talented landscape photographers out there today. And I learned a lot from him during that week, and I'm still inspired and learning stuff from Carl.
Thanks so much.
The problem is social media is terribly unfair. Terribly unfair. People like I, for some reason, do pretty well on various platforms. Carl, who is more gifted than I, have less followers on 500px and Instagram and all those places, even though he's a better photographer than I. So
That's not true.
social media is terribly unfair.
Thanks so much. But your work blows me out of the water, my friend. I'm always left in awe when I see the new shots that you're putting out, and I get frustrated. I'm thinking, where's my shot like that? Absolutely amazing.
Carl, maybe you have to quit the beer, man. That's what's pulling you down. Me down too.
What's that?
Maybe it's the beer. You might have to quit the beer.
The beer?
Yeah.
Maybe I have to take a break.
So I think there are a couple of questions that I would like to ask. When you started photography, and I think this has been in my mind for quite a long time now, that when you started photography, you were already beyond 50, and today, how do you balance your life? What is that that really drives you more towards your heart more in terms of whether it is still mathematics, or would you like to get up in the morning and pick up the camera and go forgetting about mathematics at all completely, and or you still want to continue balancing both?
So how I balance everything, work, family, photography.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that first is how do you balance it, and second is that till you picked up photography, you were only teaching the mathematics to your students and kids. Today, do you feel that today let me not go to school, let me pick up the camera and go and shoot somewhere? The weather is so beautiful and the light is so amazing. I would rather get that wonderful image today. And
Yes, yes, that happens quite often. In particular during winter, I see we have a fabulous sunrise going on, and I say to my students, today I should have been out with the camera and not here with you. And they say, yes, we agree. Absolutely, you should have been out and we should have been having a day off. So they're very supportive. No, balancing everything. Well, I think the most important thing is that we have grown-up children. Our boy is 23 and our girl is soon 26, and that frees a lot of time. And you know, after work, my wife is exhausted, and I'm also exhausted. So while she watches TV, I'm sitting in the sofa editing images. So we are sitting in the same room and we can communicate. And then perhaps I see, okay, a nice sunset is perhaps coming. Limeretta, I just head out a couple of hours with the camera. Is that okay for you? Will that work for you? And she says, yeah, that will work fine. So that's how I balance everything.
that's fantastic. And there's one more question. You are an ISI ambassador. You use ND filters, and people feel, most of the people who are trying to get into landscape photography, they have this feeling that ND filter is only to blur the motion in an image. Can you throw more light on it? How do they help you overcome the, sometimes maybe the limitations with the sensor, though there is none with Pentax that we can see, but still, if you are shooting with, let's say, crop sensor body or a full frame sensor body, which has lower dynamic range and it has some limitations, do the ND filters come to your rescue?
Yes, they do. So when Carl and I were in Jotunheimen that evening, where we had that beautiful light, the light was very strong and the shadows were rather dark. So I put on a graduated ND filter to help the sensor overcome the wide dynamic range in the scene. So that helped me getting everything in one exposure without having to blend. But sometimes I arrive at the scene just as the good light begins, and I don't have time to add filters, and then I will perhaps shoot bracketed instead, and just let Lightroom blend the images for me. But a filter will save space on your hard drive, save space on your memory card, and simplify things. So I use them simply to balance the light.
Okay.
When I started out and got my first filters in October, November 2013, I was completely hooked on long exposures. 1 minute, 2 minutes. And that was, I was completely obsessed with long exposures.
I can relate to it.
Hmm?
I can relate to it.
You can relate, yes. Good.
So, Carl, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Like you said, sorry, Ole, I have a question for you. Like you said that Carl is a wonderful photographer and social media has not been kind to him. So what is it that you are doing right? Why, of course, you have wonderful images. There's no question about it. But then there are other photographers who have wonderful images too, who don't do very well on social media. So what is it that you are doing right on social media that gets you all this attention? Can you talk about that?
I believe, I'm not quite sure, but I believe perhaps that I'm so prolific that I post so often helps. So, and also as mentioned that I had the cabin back in 2014, 15, 16, opened many doors. All those cabin images I shot repeatedly and posted. So no, I do not have a good answer for it. I see photographers who create amazing work. And if you go to their Instagram profile, they have perhaps 2,000 followers. And I think, why? This is so unfair. So social media is unfair in many respects.
We should start calling it anti-social media.
Sorry?
It's so anti.
Yeah. So no, I do not have any success formula. I'm not sure why things go, why some are noticed and others not.
No, but there is an answer in your answer. That is being always in the face, always posting. So people see you more and more and you get popular. So
Yeah.
that is dedication.
Yeah, but you see, Carl, he does super well on Facebook. For example, the landscape seascape group, his images do super well on there. So I also noticed that it varies from platform to platform. Some platforms you succeed very well. For example, I succeed very well on 500px. Instagram was a small hell. getting to work. So
Yeah, that's the truth.
yeah.
So you're up
So,
against Kim Kardashian, Ole. So that's no way you can.
I'm sorry, Som. I didn't hear you perfectly well.
You're up against Kim Kardashian. That's why Carl was laughing. Kim Kardashian. You're not going to win this one, man. You're not going to win
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah, I'm prettier than her. Could be that. So,
I think we are running out of time because the Ole has to go. But there's one question that I wanted to ask, and if somebody else also has some question, please do. There's one question that you have a supportive family, like a supportive wife. You have your kids whom you teach mathematics. They are also supportive. They always want to get their day off because they must be telling that, "Sir, today is a beautiful weather. Why don't you go and shoot?" And you have a wonderful camera with you, Pentax. You are living in a location in a country where you're surrounded by wonderful opportunities. What are the limitations?
probably my imagination, I believe. I wish I was more creative and had a more vivid imagination. I see I have a tendency to visit the same locations repeatedly. And also wish I had more time to go into the car and drive up to the mountains.
Do you feel like quitting your mathematics part and get into photography full time? Does that thought ever occur to you?
It has occurred to me, but I know if you want to make it as a professional landscape photographer, that involves a lot of hard work. You have to organize workshops. And as an introvert, that is not very tempting. Not very tempting to have people very close to me 5 days in a row. So, and I have a good salary. Teachers are relatively well paid in Norway. So, and also when you are a teacher, you can, to a certain degree, decide over your own time. I can, of course, assess tests in the evening on a Saturday morning. And then I have, for example, if Thursday promises to be very nice during the afternoon or evening, I can go out with the camera and do the math assessing on Saturday morning. So being a teacher also helps. Lots of flexi time.
Just another question just cropped into my mind because you just said that being a teacher, you mentioned certain things, but does being a teacher help you also to grow little faster than somebody else who probably started at a similar time frame as you compared to them? Did that help you, that discipline or something?
Perhaps I honestly don't know. It may be that I grasp algorithms and how things work faster, but I'm not sure. It's a difficult question to answer.
Okay, it's been really wonderful. There's one interesting question, Dr. R. Kalani Ramani says that, do you feel that your age is a limiting factor in any way?
No, not really. You notice as you get older that you do not have as much energy as you once did. And your knees and your back aren't what they once were. But no, I don't feel there are any limitations. We perhaps becomes wiser and more calm. As a kid, I had a terrible anger and temperament. Temper. And all those things has calmed as I've grown older. So I don't think it's a bad thing being old and having a camera.
Right.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
100%.
Good boy. Good boy.
So I think, thank you. Anybody, Som, you want to ask anything?
So I was just keeping a tab on YouTube, and a lot of questions are coming up. around the red cabin, right?
Yeah, red cabin, if you can. Yeah, if you can wind up, I think this with the red cabin.
This probably will be the last one, and a lot of Indians watching you, right, Ole? So first question, what would be the best time, and what are the absolute locations in Norway apart from Lofoten? Because everybody goes to Norway and ends up in Lofoten, right?
Yeah,
So
they do.
talk about other locations in Norway, right, and probably out, in Scandinavia largely, and also talk to us a little bit about the red cabin. How did you find out, and why do you shoot it so much?
Well, I discovered the red cabin by accident in August 2013. I knew about the lake around 15 minutes from where I live, and I thought I will check it out and see how it is. Can I take images here? And then I stumbled across the red cabin and shot it for the first time. And I'm a person who has a tendency to do the same thing. I'm a man of habits. So I started to visiting the cabin again and again. And I also had this period back then when I always had to have a boat as a foreground, either the cabin or a boat. I couldn't think outside the box. And my excuse back then was, okay, I do this photography thing for fun. So I go back to the cabin, I will shoot it again for my own sake. That was my excuse to remain inside my limited box, doing the same thing again and again. But on the other hand, it was perhaps not a bad idea because I learned a lot about exposure, about long exposures, and so on, how to edit. So I think it was an important stage in my learning process, going to the cabin again and again. So it's not far from where I live. Other locations, you have Romsdalen. Romsdalen is absolutely fantastic. You saw that mountain scene. Jotunheimen is absolutely stunning. Western parts of Norway, Hardanger, where you also find Vøringsfossen, which is Norway's most visited waterfall. So almost everywhere you go, you can find some great scenery to shoot. And the western parts of Norway abounds with waterfalls. If you love waterfalls, go to the western parts of Norway, drive around, and you find a waterfall almost behind every curve. So, is that okay?
Yes.
That's okay. Thank you. So I think we've already run out of time because he has to go somewhere. So thank you, Ole, and thank you everyone. Thank you all the panelists. Thank you, Sal and Carl, for joining us, and hope to see you all again sometime, Ole. If we manage to come out of this lockdown and if things settle down soon, then we will probably meet sometime in Norway as well. So,
or in India, Jassi, or in India, we would like to invite to India.
So certainly. If you happen to be here, if any plans, or we can plan it together, then certainly a lot of places in India, northern India, northeast India, there are a lot of places. So we can go out and explore.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this. I have had great fun together with you guys. It has been a pleasure. I have to admit I was super nervous and dreaded the whole thing, but it has been super fun. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.